In the 19th century, England joins the worldwide trade. They bring silks and spices from the other colonies. But unfortunately they accidentally bring the zombie virus too, and soon these monsters are all over the country. Millions of people die and rise again as zombies with a hunger for brains, and the healthy citizens begin studying deadly arts from China and Japan. Eventually the government builds the Grand Barrier, a 100-foot wall encircling London. Then they add the Royal Canal, a very deep ditch that surrounds both the city and its walls. The land between the wall and the ditch is known as the in-between. In the Second Battle of Kent, one of the bridges across the canal is breached and the zombies kill all the villagers in the in-between, which drives the king mad. After the battle is over, he orders the destruction of all the bridges except for one. Soon lords and ladies leave London to live in their own fortified estates. One day Colonel Darcy arrives at an estate in Hertfordshire County because he's heard about a bitten person. A guard checks his identity at the entrance and takes him down a tunnel, where a priest looks at his bare body to make sure he isn't bitten. Then he's finally allowed into the house, where Mrs. Featherstone is playing cards with friends. She swears there's nobody bitten here and that no zombies have entered her estate in years. Pretending he wants to play too, Darcy sits at a table and takes out a vial of carrion flies. He releases them into the room, while explaining that they can detect rotten flesh. The flies only fly around for a second before they land on a man, which means he's slowly turning into a zombie. Darcy immediately breaks his glass and stabs the guy's face before decapitating him with his blade. Afterward, Darcy asks if this man could have infected anyone in the house. Featherstone denies it, so Darcy kicks the zombie's head off to scandalise the guests as he heads out. However, Featherstone's daughter refuses to keep on lying and rushes upstairs to check on the infected man's niece. Unfortunately, it's too late. The girl has already turned and attacked the staff, and now she attacks Featherstone's daughter too. Meanwhile, Mr. Bennet has been training his 5 daughters in every form of weapon and martial art known to man so they can defend themselves against the zombies. However, their mother, Mrs. Bennet, isn't happy about it and wants them to concentrate on getting married. When Mrs. Bennet hears about an upcoming dance, she convinces her husband to let them go as a break. All the sisters are excited about it except for Elizabeth, who isn't a fan of social gatherings. They all put on their nicest dresses, but still make sure to hide weapons in them. Later at the party, Bingley is chatting with Darcy but freezes when he sees Jane, instantly falling in love with her. He asks her to dance and they have lots of fun together. Afterward, Bingley insists Darcy should dance too and tells him to ask Elizabeth, but Darcy says she's tolerable yet not handsome enough to tempt him. Elizabeth hears this and walks away, only to accidentally knock over a bottle and embarrass herself in front of everyone. Once outside, Elizabeth starts crying but is interrupted by Featherstone, who has become a zombie. She can still talk and wants to tell Elizabeth something, however Darcy shoots her in the head first. Hearing the shot, a bunch of people come out to check on them. At that moment another zombie appears and the guards ring a bell to announce an attack. While most guests rush to hide, the Bennet sisters get their weapons out and start fighting the zombies. They fight without mercy, bringing down every creature with accurate strikes of their blades and well-landed kicks. Seeing Elizabeth fight causes Darcy to start feeling attracted to her. Afterward, all the zombie bodies are burned. When the sisters go home, Jane can't stop talking about Bingley while Elizabeth won't stop ranting about Darcy's manners and pride while she trains, which makes her movements and punches much more vicious. The next day Jane gets an invitation to have tea with Bingley. Mrs. Bennet makes her take a horse instead of the coach. That way, if it rains, she may be asked to stay the night. On her way there, some dogs run by because they're being followed by a zombie. Jane gets ready to shoot, but her horse gets scared and drops her before running away. Then Jane tries to shoot, but her musket backfires and hurts her hand. When the zombie finally attacks her, Jane takes out her knife and fights hand to hand, quickly cutting off the zombie's hands and slashing its legs. Once it falls, she kicks his chest and stomps on his head to kill him. As it begins to rain, Jane notices a zombie mother with an infected baby in her arms coming for her. The next day, Elizabeth arrives at Bingley's house. It turns out they found Jane with the flu, so she spent the night there with a fever and Elizabeth came to see her. However, Darcy is worried that Jane may be infected, so while a doctor checks on her, he releases the carrion flies. The little bugs don't react to Jane and Elizabeth easily catches them all. She crushes them in her fist before giving them back to Darcy with a sarcastic comment. Afterward, Jane joins Bingley and his guests, but she turns down their invitation to play cards, saying she prefers to read. An argument ensues over what makes a real woman and Darcy doesn't know if he is impressed or hates it. That night, Elizabeth secretly watches Darcy train outside. The next day, the rest of the Bennet sisters and mother come to pick up Jane and Elizabeth. Bingley wants them to stay, but Darcy reminds him of the risks of infection. He has another argument with Elizabeth, revealing he knows she watched him last night. To keep everyone happy, Mrs. Bennet convinces Bingley to throw a ball to lift people's spirits on their way home. They notice that the local orphanage has fallen, and now the zombie orphans are wandering in the woods. Sometime later, Mr. Bennett introduces his family to cousin Collins, who will get the estate when Bennett passes because women can't be heirs. During lunch, Collins tells them that his patroness is Lady Catherine, an amazing woman who did wonders during the zombie war. He also shows interest in Jane, however Mrs. Bennett immediately turns him down, saying Jane already has Bingley, and offers Elizabeth instead. In the afternoon, Collins and the sisters leave to visit there, but they stop by the road when they find a fallen carriage with a woman screaming for help. The sisters get their weapons ready, and when the woman comes out, they open fire because she's a zombie. Jane finishes her by kicking her down the hill. As the journey continues, Elizabeth struggles to carry all the weaponry, but Collins only puts it back in her arms instead of helping her. When they arrive in town, they notice the new soldiers who will protect this area. Elizabeth meets Lieutenant Wickham, and they immediately hit it off. Darcy is riding nearby and gets jealous when he sees them, so he leaves without a word. Wickham tells Elizabeth that he and Darcy aren't on good terms because of some family issues over money. That night, everyone attends the ball and Jane spends time with Bingley. Elizabeth tries to chat with Wickham, but Collins drags her into dancing while showing lots of energy and enthusiasm. Next, Darcy asks to dance with her too, but Collins makes the moment awkward and causes them to walk away. On his way out, Darcy overhears Mrs. Bennet talking about Jane's future with Bingley and keeps emphasising his money. Meanwhile, Elizabeth bumps into Bingley and they hear a noise. When they turn around, they see a servant being attacked by a zombie. The duo gets some axes and follows them downstairs, however the zombie grabs Bingley and makes him fall. Elizabeth immediately slides down and knocks the zombie down before checking on her friend. But when she looks up, she discovers all the zombie orphans hiding down there. She asks them how they sneaked in, and a kid says that their new friend showed them the way in. At that moment, Darcy arrives and starts fighting the zombies, quickly defeating them all with fast slashes of his blade and the help of a kitchen knife. A zombie even gets pushed into the oven. Then Darcy asks if Bingley was bitten and gets ready to kill him too, but Elizabeth assures him that Bingley just fell. Before he leaves, Elizabeth tells him that he's an excellent warrior, but a bad friend. The next day, Jane gets a letter from Bingley explaining his family is moving back to London and that he'll start courting Darcy's sister instead. During lunch, Collins asks Elizabeth to marry him, but she have to give up her weapons and not fight zombies anymore. Elizabeth turns him down and rushes outside to burn off her frustrations by training. Her mother scolds her for turning down such an important proposal, but her father respects her decision. Elizabeth hugs her dad to thank him, but her mom keeps on nagging, so she runs into the woods to find some peace. In the forest, Elizabeth notices a bunch of birds flying above 4 men with top hats. She's then approached by Wickham, and when she turns around, the 4 men are gone. Wickham says he didn't see anything before inviting her to a special place. Moments later, they arrive at a church where a priest is reading a sermon. When the crowd turns around, Elizabeth is shocked to see they're all zombies. Wickham stops her from grabbing her weapons and they watch the priest feed them pig's brains. It turns out infected people don't fully transform into zombies if they don't eat human brains, and Wickham thinks this is the key to reaching an understanding between zombies and humans. Elizabeth agrees and points out they should take the idea to the Crown. However, Wickham explains the war almost bankrupted the country, so he has nobody to go to for help. Sometime later, a friend of Elizabeth's tells her she's engaged to Collins and asks her to come as her chaperone to meet the in-laws. At Collins' estate, Elizabeth is amused by a picture showing Catherine killing Lucifer. There's also a painting of the 4 horsemen of the zombie apocalypse, who are said to appear when the end is near. Elizabeth realizes they're the men she saw in the woods. Then she finally gets to meet Catherine and her daughter. Elizabeth is shocked to see Darcy is there too and learns he's Catherine's nephew. Soon Wickham also arrives because Elizabeth invited him so he could ask for the money he needs for his plan. Catherine thinks that the idea of befriending zombies is ridiculous and they would never listen to a leader, but Collins points out that the Bible says the Antichrist will lead the undead. Darcy supports Catherine's opinion and gets angry when Wickham mentions his father, so he makes the guards kick him out. Elizabeth tells Darcy that he's as unfeeling as the undead. That night, Darcy spends lots of time outside training to deal with his anger. Elizabeth can't sleep because her friend snores and goes for a walk in the gardens, where she finds Wickham. He's come to tell her that Darcy made the Bingley family leave by telling them that Jane is only after their money. Wickham also asks Elizabeth to run away together, but she turns him down. Before leaving, Wickham reminds her that the day of reckoning is coming. The next day, Darcy tells Elizabeth that he considers her inferior, but he's still attracted to her, so he asks her to marry him. Elizabeth turns him down and calls him out for what he did to Jane and Bingley, only for Darcy to defend his meddling. A furious Elizabeth kicks him and throws a bunch of objects at him before attacking him with a poker. He quickly defends himself and they end up in a compromising position on the table. Their argument turns into a full fight and they exchange a bunch of blows before they end up in Another awkward position. When Elizabeth says she'll never marry him, Darcy finally leaves and she ends up having a breakdown. Later, Elizabeth receives a letter from Darcy explaining himself. He says he didn't intend to hurt Jane, he only sent Bingley away to protect him from Mrs. Bennet. He also explains that he had to kill his own father when he became a zombie, but he still gave Wickham the money that was promised to him. However, Wickham kept coming back for more and got offended because Darcy wouldn't pay. Then Wickham tried to marry Darcy's teenage sister for the money, but Darcy saved her just in time. Lastly, Darcy informs Elizabeth that he respects her feelings for him, so to forget about his heartbreak, he's gone to London to fight against the latest zombie attack. He thinks someone is leading the zombies because the attacks were too organised. When Elizabeth returns home, she's horrified to learn that Wickham has run away with Lydia, the youngest sister. She guesses that he must have taken her to the zombie church. That night, Elizabeth is visited by Catherine, who announces Darcy will marry her daughter if Elizabeth doesn't marry him first. Elizabeth is seeing Darcy in better eyes nowadays, but she's still unsure about a relationship. So Catherine challenges her to a duel against her guard. The man is big and strong, so he throws quite dangerous punches and easily blocks Elizabeth's attacks. She refuses to give up even when he chokes her and slashes his face before breaking his arm. With an excellent kick, she throws him against a beam that breaks and causes part of the ceiling to drop on him. Catherine corners Elizabeth with her swords, but admits she respects her resolve. At that moment, Mr. Bennet enters the room to forbid Elizabeth from rescuing her sister because it's too dangerous. Jane volunteers to help, but Elizabeth doesn't want her to come because she wants her to protect the family. Catherine then offers to take care of the Bennets in her estate so Jane and Elizabeth can leave. When the Joe reaches the bridge, the soldiers block them and inform them they've set up lots of explosives. The bridge will be blown up tomorrow at dawn to stop the zombie horde in London from invading the rest of the country. The sisters ignore them and continue to move forward. Meanwhile, Bingley is on the battlefield and throws a bong at the zombies trapped in a trench, but when he's about to leave, a creature grabs him by a scarf. Luckily, Jane arrives just in time to cut the scarf and push him away from the explosion. Nearby, Darcy kills another zombie with his sword, only to find a bunch of undead hands reaching up from the ground. A huge zombie is about to attack him from behind. However, Elizabeth kills it first with an axe. She explains they're standing on a zombie graveyard, so they start stabbing the ground to kill the awakening bodies. Afterward, Elizabeth tells him about her sister being at the church, and Darcy has to inform her that the building was burned down 5 days ago, so her sister is probably dead. When Darcy leaves, it's revealed he was lying. He told Elizabeth that the church was down to keep her away from danger, but the building is actually fine. He sneaks around the church and sees the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse guiding a horde of zombies. Meanwhile, Elizabeth notices Bingley keeps looking at the road that goes to the church and not at the bridge where he's supposed to oversee the detonation. This makes her realise that Darcy lied, and she immediately leaves on her horse. In the military camp, a man discovers that someone has stolen all the brains from the dead soldiers. Back to Darcy, he enters the church through a back door and finds Lydia chained up. On a wall, he discovers Wickham's plans to attack London with the zombies. At that moment, Wickham shows up, and Darcy offers him money in exchange for Lydia, but Wickham turns it down and opens fire. The bullet hits a gate, and the noise alerts the horde, who immediately burst into the room. It turns out Darcy fed them the soldier brains to make them violent. While Wickham tries to defend himself, Darcy breaks the chain to rescue Lydia. At the same time, his horse pulls the bars from the window so his master can escape. Once outside, Darcy puts Lydia on his horse and sends her to the bridge. Then he brings down a couple of zombies before he's confronted by Wickham, so a sword duel ensues while the zombies run out of the church. In the distance, Elizabeth continues to ride and stares at London burning in horror. That moment, she sees Lydia and calls her name, but she isn't hurt. The zombie horde appears behind her and Elizabeth takes out her sword to cross it. Lydia makes it to the bridge right before they start getting ready for a detonation. Back at the church, the men continue to fight and Darcy manages to stab his opponent. However, Wickham is fine because he's been undie all along and has repressed his urge for brains. Thanks to his